I came home from work at my usual time. My wife had been ironing one of her cocktail dresses, one she had worn countless times over the past 6 years. Thinking we had plans for the evening, I felt a surge of excitement. I always loved taking her out into the city. Whenever we walked down the street together, she turned heads with her stunning appearance, and the envious glances from other men only fueled my pride. She was with me, and they were left to watch from the sidelines. Her tanned skin, thanks to her Mexican heritage, and those deep brown eyes never failed to captivate me. Combined with her long, flowing hair and slim, athletic body, she was the epitome of beauty. Back in college, she was into rowing and had maintained a muscular physique. Although her muscles had softened a bit recently as she focused more on running and aerobics, she still had that aura of strength and grace. Before I could ask her about our plans for the evening, she shifted the conversation unexpectedly. "You'll never guess who I ran into today," Maria said, without missing a beat. "Anthony? Anthony? Anthony," I repeated, trying to recall the name. It had to belong to someone significant for her to be so excited. Only one Anthony came to mind, and I ventured a guess. "Anthony, your high school sweetheart, Anthony?" "Yes, can you imagine? Out of nowhere after all these years." For context, Anthony was Maria's boyfriend during the last 2 years of high school. I had never met him, having met Maria in college, but I had certainly heard about him. Oh, how I had heard about him. They broke up only because their colleges were so far apart, but they were deeply in love, at least according to her. And although I met my future wife during freshman orientation, and we hit it off immediately, I had to settle for friendship because she wasn't ready for a relationship yet. At the end of our first year, she agreed to be my girlfriend, but she went back to her hometown, Salinas, California, for the summer. I visited her once for a few days and met her very large, very traditional Mexican family. They welcomed me, a white guy, into their clan without hesitation. I couldn't help but wonder if Anthony had reappeared during that summer, but none of us brought up the topic, and I hoped it was all in the past. "Where did you run into him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "In the lobby of my office building. I had just returned from lunch and saw him there." I was trying to figure out if it was really him when he saw me. He recognized me immediately. He's a representative for a pharmaceutical company and comes to this region every other Wednesday to meet with some doctors in the building. "Isn't that surprising?" "Yes, surprising," I agreed, though a knot of concern was forming in my stomach. What were the odds of them randomly meeting like this? And why was she so excited about it? Anyway, we're having dinner tonight to catch up. That explained the cocktail dress. I didn't like the idea of a third person intruding on our date nights. I preferred having her all to myself. But this seemed like a special situation, and I could deal with it to make her happy. "Oh, okay. When should I be ready to go out?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She stopped ironing. "Sorry, darling. I didn't mean we're all having dinner. Just him and me." I didn't like the sound of that. "What do you mean, just you and him? Why don't you want me to be there?" Force. He asked if I wanted to have dinner to catch up, and I agreed. "We'll just talk about old times. I don't want to worry about what you might think or say about what happened before I met you. I just want to speak freely. Plus, you'd probably be bored the whole time. But you know I only love you, babe." "Sweetheart, it's not appropriate for a married woman to meet alone with another man, especially an ex-boyfriend. Even if we assume nothing will happen, what if someone we know sees you on what looks like a date with someone other than me?" "Henry, it's not a date. It's just dinner between two old friends. I can't believe you're so upset about this." She put down the iron and picked up the dress to check for wrinkles. "If it's not a date," I asked, "then why are you getting one of your sexy cocktail dresses ready?" "You know I love dressing up when I go out," she countered. "It doesn't mean anything. It's like you don't trust me." "I trust you, but it's not just a matter of trust. How would you feel if I insisted on going to dinner with one of my ex-girlfriends and told you to stay home?" "I would say it's fine because I trust you and know you love me and only me." I didn't believe that for a moment. "Maria, I'm not okay with this. You're not going to dinner with Anthony alone. Either you're not going or I'm going with you." This angered her. "You're not my father, you're my husband. I'm a grown woman, and you can't tell me what I can or cannot do. I'm going, and you're not, and if you don't like it, tough. She took the dress from the ironing board and went into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table. We always discussed things like this until we reached a mutual agreement. Never before had either of us said we would do what we wanted, regardless of the other's feelings. When she finally came out, I had to admit she looked stunning, though my main thought was that she looked too stunning for what she was about to do. As she passed by me, she stopped and kissed me on the cheek. We'll talk more about this when I get back home, okay? I couldn't do anything about it. We've already talked about this, and you've made your position clear. You'll do what you want, regardless of what I think. Fine, but just remember our rules for the future. And don't forget to use protection. I'm not going to have sex with him, you son of a bitch. It's just dinner. Damn you. With these words, she stormed out of the house. I went to bed early. She left around 7 p.m., and I heard the bedroom door open around 10:30 p.m. She went straight to the shower, although she usually showered in the evenings, so there was nothing unusual about that. She slid into bed with me, and I noticed she was naked. She whispered in my ear, "Baby, I wouldn't mind today. Do you want some makeup sex?" I turned to her. Honestly, the idea of you getting turned on by Anthony and then coming home for sex doesn't really appeal to me. I'm just curious about who you're thinking of. Plus, I don't think we've reconciled yet. I turned onto my back. Her arguments didn't justify her hopes. "Well, would you prefer me to get turned on by you and then have sex with him?" she retorted. Without turning around, I said, "So you admit that you're turned on by him?" "No, that's not what I meant. I meant that no matter what happens, I'll only have sex with you. I love you, damn it, and I don't understand why you can't understand that and trust me." She just didn't get it. I sat up and turned to face her. "And I can't understand why you don't understand why this bothers me. It doesn't matter who you were to him before, but now you're my wife, and it seems like my feelings should matter to some extent. They always did before. But now, with St. Anthony in town, suddenly I'm just an obstacle to overcome, so you can do what you want." Her head dropped. "You're right, babe. I'm sorry. I should have been more attentive to your feelings. I got caught up in the moment, excited about seeing him again, and forgot who really matters to me. Can you forgive me?" Relieved that she finally understood, I pulled her close. "Of course, I can forgive you, sweetheart." She looked up at me with her beautiful brown eyes. "And now, can we make love?" We could and we did. I forgot about it until 2 weeks later when Maria called and said she was staying late at work. She needed to finish a special project. It was Wednesday, the day when old Anthony was supposed to be passing through on his regular schedule. I couldn't believe it was just a coincidence. And on the way home from work, I decided to stop by her office. On the way, I bought a couple of sandwiches, pretending that I was just bringing her dinner. Aren't I considerate? I registered at the security desk and headed to her office. Maria worked in the reception of a large insurance company, and it was the first time in 3 years that she had to stay late at work. The entrance door was locked, as it was after hours, so I knocked. The door was glass, so she saw me as she approached it. I expected the office to be empty, but she was sitting at her desk working. And of course, she turned around as soon as she saw me at the door. Her beautiful smile lit up her face. "Hi, baby. What a pleasant surprise," she said as she came over and kissed me. "What brings you here?" "I brought you a sandwich for dinner. I thought we could have dinner together, even though you had to stay late at work." "How sweet. Let's eat, but let's be quick. The longer I spend without working, the longer I'll have to stay here." We ate for about 15 minutes, chatting about our days, and then I let her get back to her tasks. I drove home feeling a bit foolish for doubting her. Maybe that dinner with Anthony was truly the end of it. They caught up, she cleared him from her mind, and that was it. I was ready to trust her again. Until it happened again, 2 weeks later. I received the same phone call about her staying late at work for another special project. If it was true, it meant the company was entrusting her with more responsibility, which was good. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just an excuse. The timing was too coincidental. This time, instead of showing up unannounced, I simply called her. I knew the caller ID would show it was me, and if she was at her desk, she'd pick up. It seemed like a straightforward way to verify that she was where she said she'd be. I called her at 5:45 and again at 6:30. Both times, she picked up on the second ring with no hint of anything unusual. A quick "I love you, miss you, wanted to hear your voice" was all it took to ease my mind. By the time she came home on time the following Wednesday, when Anthony was supposedly in town, I finally accepted that perhaps it was all over. My paranoia seemed unfounded. I decided to let go of my suspicions. Then, 2 weeks later, Maria called again, saying she was staying late at work, but this time it was on a Thursday, not Wednesday. That made me relax even more. The pattern had changed, and I thought maybe Anthony wasn't involved anymore. This continued every other Thursday, but I still called her at least once each time, just to keep my mind at ease. She always answered. Perhaps it would have continued like that if not for the office party thrown by Maria's insurance company, which took place about 4 months into this routine. It was after work on a Friday in the banquet hall of a nearby Mexican restaurant. They held 2 such events a year, one at Christmas and one in June, when this one occurred. I recognized some faces but didn't know their names, since I saw these people so rarely. The fateful conversation began with an elderly woman named Sheila, who introduced herself as the office manager and chief coordinator of extra work. "So, you're the one putting an end to my married life," I joked. She looked puzzled. "I apologize if that's the case, but I'm not quite sure what you mean," she said. Trying to keep it light, I mentioned the special projects regularly assigned to Maria, causing her to stay late a couple of times a month. Her expression turned serious. "I'm sorry, Henry, but I'm a bit confused," Sheila said. "Over the past few months, I haven't assigned any additional projects to your wife. We've only had a couple, and both were given to other people. I know that in recent months, she sometimes worked late, but that was to make up for the 3-hour lunches she took." My heart sank. The world around me seemed to blur as I struggled to keep my composure. "I see," I muttered, my voice barely audible. I excused myself, feeling like I was about to be sick. Somehow, I managed to keep my dinner down as I headed to the bathroom. My mind raced with a million thoughts, each one worse than the last. How could I have been so blind? How had I let this happen? Trust, something I had always prided myself on, had become my downfall. The switch to Thursdays suddenly made sense. Anthony must have changed his routine to avoid suspicion after I started checking up on her. Or maybe it was just a coincidence. Either way, the truth was now glaringly clear. The only thing missing was solid evidence. When the next every other Thursday came around, I borrowed my friend's car and parked near Maria's office building. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, knowing that today would reveal everything. Just after 12 o'clock, I saw them. Maria and the man I assumed to be Anthony emerged from the lobby, holding hands. They walked towards the parking lot, oblivious to the world around them. I took several pictures as they strolled, feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak. They got into a Ford Taurus, clearly not Maria's car, and drove off. I followed them, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The traffic was heavy enough that I didn't have to worry about being noticed, but I stayed cautious. They pulled into a Super 8 motel, circling around to the back and skipping the office entirely. It was all pre-planned. I parked nearby and continued to take pictures as they walked towards a room. I watched as they stopped at the door, and she kissed him passionately, his hand moving to her chest. My stomach churned, and I noticed she was still wearing her wedding rings. Did it excite him that she wore my rings while she was with him? While I waited, I made several calls. I arranged to meet with a lawyer, informed my office that I would be absent for a few days, and prepared for what was to come. But mostly, I just sat and waited. Finally, around 2:30, the door opened. I snapped more pictures as Maria stepped out, still buttoning her clothes, her hair noticeably tousled. I didn't need action shots to understand what had happened. The fact that she was with him at the motel was all the evidence I needed. I put my phone away and drove home, my mind numb. I was grateful that we hadn't started a family or bought a house. The breakup would be straightforward in terms of dividing our assets. We only had our cars and a bit of money in the bank, which could easily be split 50-50. The call came as expected. Maria was working late on another project. I simply said everything was fine and that we'd see each other around 7:30. I didn't call her that evening, thinking it wouldn't make sense, but she noticed the change and called me out on it. "Sweetheart, I've been looking forward to your calls. You used to call me every time I stayed late at work, just to say you love me. What's changed?" "Sorry, darling. I was working on something in the garage, lost track of time, and before I knew it, you were already on your way home. I promise not to forget again, though I hope these late nights will soon be over." Soon, I hope. If not, I'll ask for a short break and request someone else to take over the projects. I firmly decided that the next time would be the last. I did everything I could, even splitting our finances. I paid all the bills and handled banking operations so that she wouldn't notice anything. Although I knew what was happening, I didn't pursue her anymore. I had everything I needed. So when she called and said she was delayed again, I wasn't surprised. On the way home, I had a snack, though I barely tasted it. Then I started packing my things. There were a few hours left before Maria arrived, and I only had clothes and toiletries to pack. The entire apartment decor was her style, and the kitchen items were cheap and generic. I didn't need any of it. By 7:25, when Maria returned, I was fully packed and ready to leave. My things were already loaded into the car. She was in a good mood when she walked in the door. "Hi, darling," she said cheerfully. "How was your day?" She tried to kiss me, but I dodged. "Maria, we need to talk." "All right, dear, let me put these things down." We sat at the kitchen table, where so many memorable moments had happened over the years of our life together. She just smiled at me, as if we were about to discuss whether to buy the new sofa we had been considering. She didn't even suspect what awaited her. "So, lately you've been staying late at work often. How are your projects coming along?" "Great, great. Seems like they're really impressed with my work." "I hope it means good prospects." "It does. I might even get a promotion soon." "Tell me about the projects." "What?" Of course, she didn't expect this. She thought just saying she had projects would be enough, and that I would never question her further. She didn't think I'd want details. "Tell me about the projects. What have you been working on?" "Well, just, some analysis, of tariffs in certain areas and, stuff like that. I'm glad everything is going well for you. Is there anything you wanted to tell me?" "Not that I love you, but you already know that. I thought I did until I found out about you and Anthony." She sighed in frustration. "Not this again, Henry. Damn it, I haven't done anything with him. I haven't even seen him since that one time, several months ago." "Haven't seen him for several months. Is that true, or are you sure about that?" "Yes, Henry." But her facial expression betrayed the uncertainty in her words. She was worried. "Then maybe you'll tell me who this guy is in these photos from 2 weeks ago, if it's not Anthony." I laid out the photos I had taken, showing her coming out of the motel room in disarray. Her head dropped. Next on the table were the divorce papers. "No, Henry, please. It was nothing. Just nothing. Can we forget about it? Counseling or whatever else you want, whatever you want." "Of course not, Maria. I told you when we started dating that cheating is a deal breaker for me, and I don't accept it. You're my wife, and just in the past few months, there have been countless instances where I wasn't even the last person you had sex with. And then you lied about it until I had to show you the photos. You showed complete disrespect towards me and our marriage. There's no chance for us. I thought we had a good marriage. I'm sorry that wasn't enough for you." "Oh, Henry, please never think this has anything to do with you. I love you with all my heart, and it was never about you. I can't even explain it." All those old feelings came rushing back when I saw him for the first time, and I wanted to experience them again. That first evening, we just had dinner, and I thought that would be it. Then he kept invading my thoughts. When I met you, I was a virgin, so I never experienced this with someone I considered my first love. I got caught up in it, and when he came back after 2 weeks and invited me to lunch, I agreed. In the end, we ended up in a hotel. I did it willingly. I wish I could say I didn't want to, but I agreed. After that, it got easier each time, but less enjoyable. I thought about ending it, but obviously, I was too late. "I'm sorry, Henry. Please, I love you. Can I do something to fix this?" I'm very sorry too, Maria. I truly loved you. I walked out of the apartment for the last time. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized. At least she respected me by not resisting. I got a 2-bedroom apartment, and to everyone's surprise, Maria transferred to another office and moved in with Anthony. I focused entirely on work until the divorce was fully processed, received a nice bonus, and put myself in line for a promotion when a major Japanese electronics manufacturing company offered us their business based on my presentation. I still missed her, although I knew I could never be with her again. She had always been the most beautiful woman in the world to me, so how could I stay with her after that? Almost a year after that last evening at the kitchen table, I received a message from Maria saying she was in town and asking if we could meet up for a drink. We agreed to meet at a small bar near my apartment. When I walked in, I saw her at the other end of the room and immediately noticed that she had lost weight. She still looked beautiful, but in a different way. I greeted her warmly, gave her a slight hug, and kissed her on the cheek. "So what brought you to town, Maria?" I asked, sitting at the table across from her. I ordered a cola, as I never had a preference for alcohol, which Maria knew. That slightly surprised her when I added a strawberry daiquiri. "Alcohol, Henry? That's not like you." Over the past year, everything has changed a lot. Life is full of surprises. Perhaps that's true. Actually, I've been thinking about moving back. I miss this place. Can Anthony work in this area? It was a genuine question. I had already let go of anger and resentment. We were no longer together. He cheated on me. Is that so? How ironic, I thought. It turns out I wasn't the only regular stop on his route even then, and he didn't stop with any of them even after I moved in with him. I'm sorry to hear that. How did you find out? It seems there are other husbands who turned out to be less understanding than you. Some of them gathered together to physically express their dissatisfaction with him sleeping with their wives and suggested he move to another place. After he left the hospital, he disappeared. I have no idea where he went. She didn't look very disappointed. That couldn't have happened to a nicer person. "So, are you trying to return to work at that company?" "I am trying, but everything is on hold while I negotiate one specific case." She smiled at me with that smile of hers, the one I could never resist. But everything had changed, as I've said before. "And what is it, Maria?" As if I didn't know. "Henry, I deeply regret what I did. I was foolish, falling in love with a memory, with someone who no longer exists and perhaps never did. We had a wonderful marriage, and I still love you. I've learned my lesson. Is there a chance?" At that moment, a figure in a knee-length blue dress entered the door and made her way to our table. Or more precisely, to me. The tall blonde woman put her purse on one of the other chairs and kissed me on the cheek. "Hello, darling. Sorry I'm late. I had a prolonged business meeting. Is this my drink?" Without waiting for an answer, she took the daiquiri and sipped it through the straw for a long time. "I know. I got your message. Is everything settled?" "Of course not. It never is, you know that. But I'm done talking about work and ready to start our evening." I began the introductions. "Renee, this is Maria, my ex-wife. Maria, this is my girlfriend, Renee." "Nice to finally meet you," Renee murmured, and it was genuinely sincere. "I was thrilled when Henry told me you were in town and we would meet for a drink. I've heard a lot about you." "Hopefully some good things," Maria joked. "Mostly. Actually, he speaks very highly of you, except for the last few months of your marriage, but I suppose that was to be expected," Renee replied. I saw Maria's eyes become slightly moist. "He's a good guy," she said. "Hold on to him. Be smarter than I was." "I plan to. We've already set a date." Silently and somewhat pityingly, I watched as Maria's eyes found the wedding ring on Renee's finger, and she seemed to deflate a bit as she looked at me. "Congratulations. That's wonderful news. I'm happy for you both." Renee smiled sadly. "You hoped to get him back, didn't you?" "I did," admitted Maria. "I hoped that over time we could try again. I didn't know you were seeing someone, Henry, let alone engaged. I hoped that maybe you would try to find happiness with me. But it seems I no longer have a chance. Perhaps it's time for me to go." "I wish you wouldn't," said Renee, placing her hand on Maria's. "I really wanted to get to know you better." Maria looked visibly puzzled. "Why? Why do you want to meet the ex-wife of your fiancé?" "Maria, you were a big part of his life for a long time, and very important to him. You helped make him the person I fell in love with. Why wouldn't I want to get to know you better, maybe even be friends? At the same time, I'll never allow you two to be alone together, but I think that's just common sense." "Yes," Maria said ironically. "As someone once told me, it's not wise for someone in a relationship to be alone with their ex. If only she had followed that advice when I gave it to her."